We would like to welcome you to the Provo Municipal Council meeting. We are convened in the City Center Municipal Council chambers. It's 5:35 on August 21st. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube Provo City Council, where it will be available for on-demand viewing. The council requests that the citizens help me maintain the decorum of the meeting by turning off electronic devices, being respectful to the council and others, and refraining from applauding during the proceedings of the meeting. We will begin with a roll call.
Cliff Strachan.
George Handley.
Kay Van Buren.
Dave Sewell.
Gary Winterton.
David Harding.
George Stewart.
Dave Connect.
Mayor Kafusi.
Wayne Parker.
Thank you. We will begin with an opening prayer and Pledge of Allegiance by Doug Robbins, what's your title, Doug? Assistant Parks and Recreation Director.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet together in this public space and celebrate the gifts of freedom. We're thankful, Father, to live in a society where the exchange of ideas is welcomed and honored. And we're grateful for those that serve on our behalf and make decisions based on these principles. Father, we ask Thee to bless us with Thy Spirit, that we'll be able to meet tonight in a spirit of cooperation and kindness, and that wise decisions will prevail. These things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Stand with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is a presentation for the Employee of the Month. And we'll invite Jenny to come up and do that.
Thank you. My name is Jenny Starley, and I work in the Parks and Recreation Department, and I'm the Provo City Employee Association President. It's my privilege to announce the August Provo City Employee of the Month is from the Police Department and is Austin Williams. He is a senior police officer. Lieutenant Jared Barney will be coming up to share a presentation on Officer Williams. And after the presentation, we would like to invite Police Officer Williams, his family, supervisors, the council members, the mayor and Wayne Parker, and the Employee Association officers to come up and take a picture right up here. We'll turn the time over to Lieutenant Barney.
I figured I'd have him come up here. You might not recognize Austin from his face, but if you look at his forearms, from a recent body camera that was released that went viral where he had a citizen help him tackle someone that tried to take his gun, you might recognize him from his arms. So, Officer Williams has been a tremendous resource to the Provo Police Department throughout his career. His wife Tori, he has a wife Tori and 5 beautiful children. He started with the police department in 2007. He's served in many capacities. The 2 most notable that I have are he has a passion for motorcycles. He's been a part of the motor team for many years and has helped develop the program. He's an instructor for the state of Utah, which is a major accomplishment. This guy can run a cone course faster than any trooper that I've ever seen. He's amazing on a bike. He's defined as a duck to water when it comes to a cop on a bike. He's been a member of the mountain rescue team for 6 years. He's been involved in many difficult rescues and difficult recoveries also through those years. One of the patrol calls that stands out with Austin is he went out on a 2-year-old boy that was found face down in a pool at the Residence Inn. The mother of the boy ran out of the hotel hysterically holding her son in hand and handed her boy to Austin. The boy was lifeless. Austin quickly turned the boy face down over his knee and began pounding on the boy's back until water began to come out of his mouth. After about 30 long seconds, the boy threw up and began showing signs of life again. Austin was able to keep the boy's airway open and to keep the boy alive until paramedics could arrive. That boy has made a full recovery. Austin is a can-do and go-to-go guy. It is very fitting and an accurate description of Officer Williams. Without fanfare, Austin serves this community with his heart on his sleeve. He genuinely cares about those he works with, he works for, and the citizens of this community. He goes to great lengths each day to give special care the Austin Williams way. Provo Police Department, we are very lucky to have such an outstanding officer. Austin Williams is truly one of our best. I congratulate you. Thanks. Can we get his family to come up?
Mr. Chair, if I could make a quick comment.
Yes, please.
I'd like to, oh, she just stepped out, but welcome Ms. Starley to the,
There she is.
as our new president for the Employee Association. Great job on the presentation tonight, and we look forward to some great work from you this coming year.
We will now turn the time over to the Covey Center Director, Paul Dearden. And Paul, I appreciated, I don't know, not many people know this, but we had an employee that was hurt last week. And as council members, we want to make sure that, would you wish her well for us? Thank you.
Definitely make certain of that. We're here tonight to give the council a chance to see a little bit of the show that we have going on currently in the Covey Center called The Nerd. We've invited two of our actors for a little presentation. Dylan Wright will be playing the part of Willem, and Andrew Groom will be playing the part of Rick Stedman. This show has actually been running for 3 weeks already. We're in the last week of the run, so those of you that don't have your tickets, you better get them quick. It plays Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we close on Saturday night. I know some of you have already seen it, so this will be a treat for you again. Gentlemen, we'll turn it over to you.
Rick? Rick, there's something I've got to say. Oh, okay. All right. You're here, and I'm. Rick, all I said was you're here, and I'm here. Oh. Okay. Okay. Now, as you know, when two people are around each other a lot of the time, they can't help influencing each other and influencing each other's ability to function. Are you still with me?
You're here and I'm here.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about really is personality. Isn't it? I mean, I know there's some qualities in me that make it difficult to have me around. No, I'm sloppy. I lose things. Always getting lost. And you know, and some people, they just aren't able to deal with that. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's just personality. You see what I'm driving at here? Okay. Okay. So we all have these character traits. So what if, just out of curiosity, what if someone were to say to you, "Oh, get out of here and don't ever come back"? Something like that. I mean, I know it's hard, but if you stepped back, do you think you could see what might lead a person to say that to you?
Oh, sure.
Really?
Oh, sure.
Oh, Rick, that is great.
Sure, like if he hated me because I believed in God, or believed in God, or maybe he hates people that work in a factory, and he hates me because my hands are all rough and stained with honest chalk, you know?
No decent human being would hate you for having your hands stained with honest chalk.
And what else? Maybe he hates me because I fought in war, and he hates people with purple hearts.
Oh, for the love. What? Nothing. Okay, let me just ask you this. Now, what would you say are the main differences between you and me? Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. None.
None. You mean you and I are...
The same, sure.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Rick, do you know what this is? T-square.
Oh.
Gotta get back to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. Oh, hey! I bet you don't think I don't know what you're looking for,
What?
right?
What?
Right? Wait, don't even answer that.
Answer what?
Oh, you want to guess?
Guess what?
What? Guess what? I give up. Anything? Okay, well, I got one for you. You know your picture of that hotel?
That's what I was looking for.
Oh, I know. So, this morning I took it out because you said you were afraid it was like missing something, right?
I may have. Rick, if you've seen that, that is my final color
I
rendering.
know. So this morning I took it out and I held it up to the light, you know?
Right.
And I looked at it this way, and then I looked at it that way, and then I looked at it this
Rick,
way again. And
Rick,
then, wait, I finally realized what it was missing. So simple. A chimney. See? Oh, not this one. That one's just a goof, but that one on the left, see? I don't know where I got the idea. God, I guess.
Rick, did you put a hole in this?
Oh, yeah. Man, I thought it was a lot of things, but I sure never thought that I was an architect.
Rick, I don't know what to say.
Oh, that's okay. So, what would I do next if I were me?
What?
You know, in the architect business, could you, like, show me the ropes, introduce me around, or...
What?
Hey, we could be partners.
Ow! What happened? Oh, it's fine. I'll take care of it. Ow!
You're bleeding.
It's fine.
No,
Rick,
you
no,
sit
I'll
there.
be fine. I'll
Sit
take
there.
care
I
of
have
it.
just
Rick,
been
I'll...
confident. Don't sit there now. This is my mother's kitchen remedy. You just rub it into the cut.
Rick,
Sit there now, and don't move. I'll be in here heating up the salt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That is a fun show. We will now move to the public comment portion. Brian, would you help us get started with that?
I'd love to. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. Since there's only the one item, I'm going to skip the next part. At this time, 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Additional time may be given to individuals specifically invited to speak, such as applicants, neighborhood chairs, or others that may be representing additional persons. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't mean for this to be a comment. So I noticed that the comment period is about the environmental assessment. If I were here to speak in favor generally or opposed generally to the selling of the park, would I do it at the time of the discussion of the environmental assessment, or would I do it during the open public comment period?
It would probably be most appropriate during the open comment period.
If I were generally opposed or in
Yes.
favor of selling the park?
Yes.
If I was interested in talking about that, I should discuss it this time. And if I
think
wanted
that-
to discuss the environmental assessment, I should wait until that's on the agenda.
I think that that would be most appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that to make sure. And since I'm not supposed to speak, you said that if you speak early, you shouldn't speak late, correct? Okay, so I'll wait to speak about the environmental assessment at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping me understand.
Bonnie Morrow, North 10th View Neighborhood Chair. I'm here to speak not directly to the environmental study, but to another aspect of the motion that is before you tonight. So I feel it's appropriate after this previous that I speak now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I would ask the chair if he could allow a slide to be posted on the screen at this time.
It's fine.
This sign is posted at Dixon Middle School, and it reads, "No public use without written authorization from Dixon Middle School," and it it gives a phone number for field rental information. So that field, for all intents and purposes, is closed to the public, as it says, no public use. We have controversy going between the two neighborhoods. As you know, I'm north, my neighborhood is north of 10th View High School, and 10th View High School sits in the Edgemont neighborhood, and I'm in the North 10th View neighborhood, right on the border. And one of the controversies going around is that the public space would be closed to public use. And we had a letter that was sent out from the Board of Parks and Recreation, the chair of the board, that stated, came out yesterday at 12:18, that stated on bullet point 1 that the school district has agreed to keep the south end of Tim Kiwanis Park and playground area intact and available for neighbors to use. And that was an email that was sent out broadly and signed by the chair of the board. So we would ask respectfully that if that is the case, that that be honored and that we keep that in mind as we move forward. I know my time is up, but I would like to emphasize that our schools are getting crowded, and Edgemont Elementary is now needing more room for their kindergartners, and we have a brand new school, so public space and open space is valuable and precious. So I would hope that you would consider that and that we have some type of agreement in our sale. Thank you.
I also would like to speak about the park. My name is Charlene Goodliff, and usually I don't love doing this type of thing, but I think that public and open spaces have always required that people protect them against monetary investments and interests. And I feel it is my duty to say my piece here. I think it's short-sighted to sell this land in the city for land on the outskirts of the city, that we need this open space, and we need it regularly for the health of our children and the wellness of our neighborhoods. And not only that, but it's an environmental issue that I think we're not considering fully because we have this short-sighted plan. And we need to think of the plan further down the road. And we have this Little Rock Canyon, which drops water into this field. And we need that water. Utah, we should be concerned about our water, shouldn't we? And we need the mature trees for our air quality. Utah, don't we want to think about our air quality? I mean, we're talking about the health of not just our neighborhood, but our entire, our children everywhere. It's portrayed as we, the neighborhood, are just this nitpicky little neighborhood, and sacrifice your neighborhood. We're going to build something bigger and better somewhere else. But that makes people drive. It makes emissions. We want local parks, and we need that local groundwater for the well that sits right on that property. We need the land that was to protect against that flooding. That's why there are sandbags around the outside of that park, is because there was flooding. And there has been flooding from that Little Rock Canyon. And I think it's just short-sighted for us to not look at the bigger picture of what Utah needs. Thank you.
My name is Kay Garner, and I live in the Edgemont neighborhood. We, the neighbors of the park, feel that the school board and the Parks Department, not the city council, have given misleading, even seemingly dishonest reasons for the sale of this property right from the beginning. Title IX issues were always given as the basis for the sale of the park, which issues could be easily solved. There's room now for a girls' softball field, and the public is already using the baseball field occasionally, so there really are no Title IX issues. The school board has since given the reason that it will need a staging area when Timpview High School is remodeled or rebuilt, but they still always state Title IX reasons, as does the Parks and Recreation Department. The staggering amount of taxpayer money it will take to purchase the park would surely be better spent by the school district on A, salaries. We know Timpview has lost teachers to other schools in order to receive higher salaries in other districts. B, school safety, which is currently a big issue. We have not been able to help you understand the importance of the community feeling the park gives to the Edgemont neighborhoods, not just our little neighborhood, but the neighborhood at large in Edgemont, a park without fences and locked gates. And you have not been able to convince us that the city is not using the sale of our park to help fund the purchase and building of a sports complex in a different part of town.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Brockbank. I am a resident of Provo City, specifically the Edgemont area, for the last 15 years. And my children have grown up playing in the Tim Kiwanis Bonus Park, and I understand the concerns of some of these neighbors. But I would like to speak to you tonight with an overall big picture of what our community needs, more importantly, what our city needs. I have worked with a competitive soccer club for the past 6 years in the Provo area, and we are bursting at the seams with a number of children who are wanting to participate not only in soccer, but in other recreation sports. And we are short on field space. The fields are overcrowded and overused. And I think Provo City does a wonderful job of trying to maintain those fields for our use. But tonight, we do need to look at the bigger picture. We don't need to just think about a neighborhood park. We need to think about what's best for our community and what a sports complex could actually bring to our city. Not just with the benefits of what our children can use, but the benefit of our economics to our community as well. Thank you.
My name's Elda Benson. I live in the Edgemont area as well. I'd like to make a comment with regards to the last woman that just spoke. As looking towards the sports court or the sports park that you are proposing, in your last council meeting that was held last week, you stated that on a yearly projection, you project that it will contribute $11 million per year to your revenue for the city. Based on that, I don't believe it is contingent upon the sale of Benoist Park, the sale of Benoist Park. You can still have the sports park, and it is still able to generate your $11 million. I also feel that if you have $11 million added to your the revenue for Provo City, there would be no bonds. I feel that would be needed for additional revenue for building additional need for revenue for schools, nor do I think you need bond money for the additional expense for rebuilding the city building, nor the improving the police department, because you've got these additional revenues. So if you're going to go to selling the Benoist Park, I'm definitely against any bonds, because your sports court with $11 million that you stated in your meeting will be generated on an annual basis should more than compensate for the cost that you'll be paying high yellow book value for the Benoist Park. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I respond briefly?
I'm going to hold off. I think that we better not respond during this public comment period. We can maybe take a minute after. Thank you.
Thank you, council members, for giving us this opportunity to speak about this, the topic that we have at hand. I'd like to take the opportunity to let you know I'm a Provo City resident. I'm part of the North Tempview boundaries, and I'd like to thank the school district and the public Provo City Parks and Recreation, who are well represented here today, for being transparent, for their transparency and openness and willing to assist the Provo City.
Will you state your name for the record?
Greg Bostock. Their transparency and being open with us residents and knowing what could be the outcome or the possibilities with the purchase of Benoist Park by the city. I would like to state that this is a great opportunity for the city to kind of, in essence, double dip on taxpayer dollars. We can take one park and we can turn that park into two, allowing the school to use that park, the Tempview High School to use that park for many of their recreational and sports things, sports activities that they have, who don't currently have locations, including the softball team. There's many other clubs on campus that would be able to use that forum, that location, including the band, Ultimate Frisbee Club. There's a whole bunch of activities at the high school that don't have a place to practice right now. They're currently going over on the city park and practicing. The high school baseball team also hasn't been able to do things that they would like to with the baseball field, as they just have first right of use, and that park does belong to the city. Again, I do think this is a great opportunity for the council members to create a situation where a segment of the population would receive a second park, and I would be an advocate for that park to be in the northeast Provo area, as we have very few parks in that area already. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Daly, and I live in the Wasatch neighborhood of Provo. However, I do have a daughter who's on the softball team, and as I thought about how important it is to have the softball field at the school, somebody talked about safety of our children. We have to get our children from Tempview to either Foxfield or to Herman Park And some of them are 14, 15 years old. They aren't allowed to drive, or they drive on their own if it's off-season. There's also bus transportation that has to go where every other school has a softball field or a baseball field at their school where they don't have to be transported somewhere. I think that's important that we have localized sports at the high schools so that there isn't transportation issues. With baseball and softball, I think it's an important sport. Softball last year had 3 teams just for the girls softball. And so it's an important sport. It builds teamwork, it builds unity within the schools, and I think it's really important that we remember that, especially if we can share the fields and share the neighborhood with all of the kids so that the kids growing up in the neighborhood see that these teams are playing together on the fields and it's important to them, that they start to get excited about sports as well, and that they build that same camaraderie and teamwork. So I just hope you remember that it's important to have the sports teams at the field, at the school, and consider that as you look at all the different options that are brought before you. Thank you.
My name's Greg Bird. I live in the River Bottoms area down by Will's Pit Stop. I'm a proponent of the sale of the land, and I actually have children at a young age right now that would benefit greatly from the sale for the additional parks that we're talking about. And listening to some of the public comments, I see this more than just a neighborhood right next to this current park. It's more of a community thing for all the residents of Provo entirely, especially those of us who have children, who will use the parks more. This seems like a no-brainer to me to make the sale and do the sports complex, but I think it's a great idea. I like the proposal.
I'm Douglas Kohler. I'm a retired surgeon. I live across the street from the park. By nature and by training, I like to cut away confusion and get to the heart of the matter, so to speak. It seems to me that the fundamental question is this. The land was originally sold to Provo City by the Banus family to be a park in perpetuity. The question then becomes, is Provo City an honorable entity whose officials honor prior commitments, or is Provo City a dishonorable entity who forgets prior commitments? If it is the latter, then anyone who has an agreement with or an understanding with Provo should pay careful attention and beware.
Hi, my name is Danny Engelman. I live in North Provo in the Indian Hills neighborhood, and I want to thank the council for the hard work that's been going on in the school district on this proposal on the sale of the park. What a complex issue, and what a great opportunity for us to seize this moment to bring the community together and make some real improvements. I'm involved with the school quite a bit down on the baseball field. Change is inevitable. The park's been there for a long time. I've had the unique experience of being in the neighborhood for 15, 20 years. And with change coming on, with the school growing, the neighborhood changing, needs arise. And the proposal, the plan with the changing the park, adding it to the school, bringing the teams together, seems to be a great solution and compromise with the needs met of the neighborhood in Edgemont and the school. The people at the school are working so hard to try to accommodate the students and the sports teams and the public on the fields. And they've been doing a lot of juggling to make things happen, practice time, sharing field space, and it's working, but they really are busting at the seams. They need the opportunity to spread out a little bit and give everybody a chance to have a place to call home. I'm at the park quite a bit, and I love seeing the neighbors there with their families, bringing their pets up there, enjoying the open space. And the proposal meets those needs, and it satisfies both sides, the school and the community. Nobody wants to lose open space, especially Provo City or the district. I'm a proponent of selling the park and letting the district keep their promises as well as the city maintain their promise to keep that an open space. It's a great compromise. Satisfy both sides of the argument. Thank you for your time.
We normally allow, you can come up. We normally allow 15 minutes. We're going to give 5 more minutes. We've been over the 15 minutes, but we'll go 5 more.
Thank you.
And appreciate you all being here today.
My name is Sharon Donaldson, and I own actually 2 homes in this neighborhood, and I feel that if the land is sold and the school district gets a hold of it, I think it needs to be in writing what their intent of is doing or what they will do with the property. That's the thing that I'm most concerned about. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Kafusi. My name is Fidel Montero, and I am the principal at Timpview High School, but I'm also wearing my hat as a father of 5 kids that, between ages 1 to 15 who play in that park, who use that park, and who love that park. I also see hundreds, if not thousands, of students who utilize our very limited space and don't have a chance to access that park. This morning at 5 in the morning, we had kids practicing on the football field because they wouldn't have access to the fields for the rest of the day. This afternoon, I dropped off my son for a football practice, and he was one of about 60 boys, ages 12, who were practicing on our space because they can't access the park. There was a soccer game going on at the same time, and I think lacrosse is waiting to hop on and use the field. You've heard the baseball and softball community. So I get the tensions. I see them as a parent. I see them as a school administrator. What I'm recommending for the board is to find a win-win solution where we can honor that green space. We're completely open to our neighbors who want to come and access our facility. In fact, just recently, I called my custodian at 5 in the morning because I knew there was a family that wanted to use the park, our track field, and I believe the doors were locked. And I said, please make sure that they're open so our neighbors can access that space. So we're committed to creating a win-win situation where our children, my little people who are 3 years old and 5 years old, can go and access green space, but also where the hundreds of young people who are active, participating, can also have the same space. And for the families that also enjoy that as an extension. So thank you for your consideration, and thank you for the work that you do.
Hello, my name is Eric Waite, and I am a Provo City resident in the Timpview area. But I'm also a board member for the Utah Arsenal Soccer Club, which is the largest competitive soccer club in Utah County. And the proposal that is going to enable the new sports complex is critical. We are at a very critical place in the state of Utah, and I've also participated in the state association for allowing the opportunity for children to have these sporting activities. And the problem is in the middle of the cities, it's not going to happen. We're already, we have been very grateful for Provo City allowing our club to rent and utilize the Sertoma Park by Centennial Middle School. But that is getting pressure now by the city to use many other things. And I think that the sports complex is critical for future growth because it is going to be very difficult to maintain the open spaces within the city and have all of the pressure and what we will need to do. And to allow the high school to utilize that and to have a win-win with the residents and then to allow the sports complex, I think is going to be critical for the next 15 to 20 years of growth. And so we are very supportive of that and feel that it is a great compromise that's been proposed by the council. Thank you very much.
Hi, I am Jenny Ingeman, and I live in the Timpview neighborhood as well. Mother of 4 kids who will be going to that school. And I spent a lot of time traveling to other cities and other schools in competitive sports. And one thing I noticed is that the facilities at these other places are so much better than what we have in North Provo. And my concern is around maintaining the having a great facility in North Provo is going to help the overall community and the neighborhood and keep families who want to buy homes and live in that area versus going to Orem, going to moving out. Great facilities now out in West Provo, but we want to keep Northeast Provo strong. So thank you.
Okay, we'll go one more here.
Thank you. I am Sarah. I am a lacrosse coach at the high school. And I just really believe that like providing more spaces for sports to be able to happen can have an impact in a lot of youth's lives. I firmly believe in the use of recreation and sport to help teach life lessons. And help people become better citizens. I also believe that a win-win solution could be found with the community where the fields are available for school use, but also available for public use. That's all.
Thank you. We'll now close the public portion of public comment. Mr. Harding, you wanted to respond to one item, or?
Yeah, we normally don't respond to public comment, but I did want to just make a clarification. The $11 million figure that was given, that was $11 million of economic activity that would be generated by the sports park, not $11 million in revenue to the city.
Thank you. Mr. Connect.
And I don't know if anyone's got a quick calculator, but what would that actually generate for the city because of sales tax on the $11 million? 11,000? Okay, George says like 11,000, 1%.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to item number 4, which is the proposed draft environmental assessment. I thank you very much. We're going to go to item number 3, which is a consent agenda item. This is something that the council has studied and don't feel that there's a lot of necessity for discussion around this. And we have studied it, and with that in mind, we have a proposed amendment, and we'll look for discussion. Oh, it's an implied motion. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for the benefit of the audience, so the way that a consent agenda works is items can only appear on the consent agenda if it's been moved by the council to do that. If the items are on the consent agenda, then they are voted on without any discussion or consideration. However, one of the procedural rules is that before that happens, you do need to ask the members of the council if anybody wants it to be removed from the consent agenda.
Thank you. So asked then. Would anyone like to remove this?
Mr. Chair, in order to answer that, would you mind asking if there was any members of the public that wanted to speak on this item?
No, fine. Is there anyone that would like to?
Gary, 110,000, not 11,000.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no one, we will call for a vote. Those in favor? That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 4, the proposed draft environmental assessment Land and Water Conservation Fund, Timp Kiwanis Park Banus property conversion. And we would like you to, this will be open for public comment, and we would like you to limit your comments to the environmental assessment document at this point. Scott Henderson from our Parks and Recreation will present this.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Sorry about the first part. I did say thank you in that first part. Parks and Recreation will provide just a little context before we turn over to Ron Clegg, consultant, for the environmental assessment. Just to give you a timeline of where this is at. This seems a little different because of the public hearing that happened before, and so hopefully that these comments aren't redundant to anything that was said, but we were approached by the school district, we as in Provo City, regarding land needs at Timpview High. And this is after they had done extensive review of other options. There are trouble on both sides, and the EA report will go over these issues, however disputed, on Land and Water Conservation Fund uses at that park site, and also Title IX and being proactive in being ahead of Title IX issues. Another factor in our willingness to look at this is we look at this as not a loss of green space because of early commitments from the school district that it would be maintained as field and still be green space. Also commitments of improved and protected park amenities, that the playground would remain and a new pavilion would go to that site. And the school district has made these comments as recent as the work session on August 7th, when McKay Jensen made those commitments at that meeting. Every single day we're engaged in park maintenance, production, and protection. But what we look at here is the kids at Timpview High are the same kids we have programmed to their entire lives. And these are literally half of the high school age citizens that we have. So we listen to requests that serve our citizens. And in our mind, there is no doubt that Timpview needs additional field space for extracurricular and sports activities. Whether you're looking at additional space for Timpview or finding a mitigation site option that creates a regional sports park that could change Provo forever, or committing to move another pending park down on the list and put a park in this area if this would go through to make sure we take care of this neighborhood. These are all what we feel, and I guess it is a department perspective, that we are trying to do the best for the entire community. Realize there's not consensus on this, but we do have problems on both sides, both the school district and Provo City's side, and that needs to be addressed. I'm sure it'll come up during the EA. Doing nothing is not an option. None of us were around for the creation of these issues, but we are just the lucky ones here that get to find the solution to this problem. So it's something that we need to work on together all the way through. Doug Robbins is going to talk a little bit about the topics of mitigation and the management of that area.
Thanks, Scott. And as Scott said, there's a lot of circumstances that have led us to the point that we're at now. Like you mentioned, back in 1967, I doubt anyone really could have contemplated the growth of the school and the needs that exist in the community today. But with the baseball field, the cell tower that was constructed, the access road, access to the gates through the property to access school district property, scheduling of the field for the multiple different clubs and activities. The city and our staff was really kind of caught up in that, and now effectively the school district is programming those sites. So it's again leading us to a situation of greater and greater non-compliance over time, and that could be expected to continue at the current with the current situation. Ownership does matter, ownership of property. You're not going to find an agency that's very interested in owning a piece of property and maintaining it for another group. So it's totally reasonable for the school district to want to own property that they manage and maintain. There's a duty of care on athletic fields that's a little higher than other areas, and they, I think, want to maintain those. I know Provo Parks and Recreation certainly wants to own and maintain properties that we're responsible for, and past experience has really shown what can happen with injuries and things where those responsibilities aren't kept by the owner. Conversion is the process, the legal process that we've been directed is a solution to this situation. It's not easy. I think it was designed by the federal government to be, and our lawmakers in Washington, to be difficult, to prevent an easy sale or a non-thoughtful sale of properties that were acquired through this process. And so the process requires a mitigation site. The regional sports park was a requirement of this, considering the Canyon Road property, the 8 acres, is up there and meets level of service needs in that general neighborhood. We had to look for another site that would qualify, and that's why the regional sports complex was conceived. It was so really the results of this are a 10-acre parcel turning to a 53-acre parcel that will be part of a 100-acre regional sports complex. 53 acres of that would be where the stamp of the Land and Water Conservation Fund would be transferred to. It would accommodate 20 fields that would enable us to host regional tournaments and bring that economic impact that was discussed previously to the community. And those estimates were put together in coordination with the Utah Visitors and Convention Bureau. So we don't take this lightly. It's a serious thing to sell off the park land, but we think we've got a good partner in the school district. We feel that they can demonstrate trust, and we think they're worthy of that trust. And Thomas will talk a little bit further about the land and water conservation process.
Thanks, Doug, and again, thank you for this opportunity to talk about some of the federal requirements, the key federal requirements for this conversion process. And, you know, as been said, this is a challenging process, you know, and Scott, as Scott said earlier, you know, we're honored to be a part of the solution of the issues at hand. The need that the school district has for additional property, additional open space, the need, the potential Title IX issues, and the non-compliance of land and water conservation that affects the city. And as just a little bit of background too, as Parks and Recreation staff, it is our mission, as stated in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, to enhance the quality of life of city residents through our commitment to create dynamic parks, recreation facilities, programs, and services of the highest quality. And with that mission in mind, that's how we've approached this proposed conversion. Some of these federal requirements, they set out and they determine how the value for this property is to be determined, and that's through the Yellow Book process, which means that the land has to be appraised at the highest and best use. And that highest and best use, and again, this is just for value purposes, has been determined as residential land. That's what it's to be, the value that it's to be sold at, that's how we've come up with that $2 million price tag. Those funds, again, per federal requirements, are required to be used to purchase land. It cannot be used to develop other parks. It cannot be used, it has to be used to purchase additional open space. And that open space must be unsubscribed and uncommitted, meaning that it cannot be part of an existing master plan, which, again, disqualifies the 8-acre piece to the north, which is part of our master plan already. And based on our studies and based on the studies of our consultants and the alternatives that we've gone through, including with the school district, what they've gone through, we've determined that the best place and the preferred option to use this money is for the regional sports complex in Southwest Provo. So as a Parks and Recreation staff, we believe that this proposal to convert Tim Kiwanis Park and sell it, and is the best option overall for the citizens of Provo, for the Provo City's Park and Recreation Program, and the Provo School District. And with that, we recommend that this environmental assessment and the proposed conversion be approved by the City Council on September 11th to be submitted to the National Park Service for review. And with that, I will turn the time over to Ron Clegg to go over the environmental assessment.
While Ron is coming up, I do appreciate, Thomas, your comments. This will not be voted on tonight. This is the first of 2 public hearings.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I mixed up this presentation because you probably had it memorized by now, so I'm just going to take a few minutes and go through this. So I've been the city hired me about 2 years ago to work with them on this process of converting this park. I didn't know very much about Tim Kiwanis Park at the time. Over a couple of years, I've learned a lot. I've learned about what's gone on. I've heard the neighbors. And the document has tried to be objective and put all that in a report that the federal government can review. It's not perfect. It's a draft, and I'm sure we'll get comments on things we need to fix. We'll probably get some comments tonight of things that need to be fixed. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through that. I know reading environmental assessments, riveting, and like a good novel, so I'll just kind of walk you through this. So this is where we are. We've seen this slide before. We have started in the summer of 2016. We're 2 years into this. This is the time for the public to comment on the environmental assessment. The comment period started July 31st, I think, and goes through the end of this month. So in addition to tonight, they can go out and comment on the document. It's posted on the Parks and Recs website, and I don't know where else it is, but anyway, it's available for comment, and we want comments. We'll address those comments. We have to address them for the final, and that gets submitted to the National Park Service. This location map, most people in the audience today know where this is located, but in case somebody doesn't know, we're talking about the park that's immediately south of Timpview High School. This is just a little bit of background. I'm not going to read all this, but in January of 1967, Provo acquired some money from the National Park Service to acquire that park. Half of that money was from the Park Service. You had to pay the other half. The park has gone through several names. That's in the document, and then it just talks about what was going to be in there. This is what's currently up at the park. So if you look at the 6F boundary, there's a few problems with it already. In addition to the park, the baseball field not being available for public use, you have a well house on there that's there because there's a well that's a major part of your culinary water system, and it has to be there. We've talked to the water department, and they said, don't move that. It's critical to our water supply. So you have a well there with a road going into it, which is wasn't planned as part of the 6F project. There's also some property encroachments on the south side. You can see those. They've kind of crept into there. There's roads that are in there. There's a cell tower. There's a road that goes around the east side that goes to a cell tower that's in there. So in addition to the ball field not being available for public use, there's some other violations that have gone on just over the years. I don't think any of it was intentional. I just think those things happened. But here we sit trying to correct this, and so that's kind of what we're trying to do. The purpose and need for the conversion was bringing Provo City into Section 6F compliance. I'll talk about each of these a little bit more. Addressing Timpview High School Title IX concerns and providing an opportunity to rebuild and expand Timpview High School. These are the issues. I talked about some of these already. The baseball field is not managed or scheduled for public use. I know there are some people in here who say it is available for public use. I went out on the website, and I'll show you this in a minute, and to see if it was available. And on the Parks and Recs website, it specifically says this is used for Temp View. It's not available for public use. I've been up there. It's not gated, to my knowledge, but it's well groomed, and I personally wouldn't. I was uncomfortable just walking out there. So you know, I guess the public can use it occasionally. The dates for baseball are from the end of February through the end of May. That's when Temp View has baseball. And then there's things scheduled on that field through the summer, camps and so on that go on. The school district has that access road, which I mentioned, the well house, and the property encroachments. This is the page I was telling you from the Provo City website. So it says Temp View High School ball field use only. So if it's available to the public, I don't know how you use it. I guess you just go up and use it. So the next issue was this Title IX concern. You can read what the Title IX is, but basically it is that there shouldn't be any discrimination between boys and girls in the education program that's receiving any federal money. So we have a boys baseball field up at Temp View High School, but there's no girls softball field. They are traveling about 4 miles to the south to play at Harmon Field. And so Stephanie asked me to make sure it's clear, there have been no formal complaints filed on Title IX. They're trying to be proactive to address this because they know it's a concern. As I prepared this, I thought, well, yeah, that's not fair. The girls are driving 4 miles and the boys walk out to school and go play baseball. So, you know, it's kind of a subjective thing. Providing an opportunity to rebuild and expand Temp View High School. Temp View was built in 1977, 41 years ago. So it's getting old. It's currently experiencing some structural issues. I think there's some cracking going on and some settlement and some other issues. That's not the most stable ground up in that part of Provo. And so they've got to address some of that for safety reasons. Some of it's just the building's getting old. We have some projections of enrollment in 2017, 2018 this year. It's 2,173 students. In 2023 and 2024, the enrollment's expected to be 2,339 students. And in 2028 and 2029, it's expected to be 2,505 students. So about 450 more students, in addition to what's gone on over the last 40 years. The campus is 29 acres. The new Provo High School campus is 39 acres. Many high schools are on sites in excess of 50 acres. And so it doesn't have a lot of room. Provo School District has consistently emphasized the need for more space. We've heard some of that earlier tonight. And then the park may provide a buffer area for construction staging. If they do, whatever they do at the school, it's nice to have some area for construction staging. The alternatives that were looked at, no action alternative is required to be looked at. The no action in this situation doesn't fix anything. You still be non-compliant. Provo School District still has potentially some Title IX issues. And it's just not really a good option. It's not an option, really. Before we got involved, Provo School District had gone out and hired a consultant to go out and look for places where they could build some ball fields, both a girls' softball field and a boys' baseball field. And so they went out and looked along the whole east bench. I'll show you that slide in a minute. And came up with 11 locations they looked at. None of those worked, and so Provo School District approached Provo City about potentially using the Temp Kiwanis Park, and that's when Provo got involved, I got involved, to look at what would be required to do that. And then as we've gone through this, there's been some other alternatives that we've investigated that aren't really site related. They're like scheduling and some of that stuff. So the criteria for looking at new ballpark location was the site should be as close to Timpview High School as possible. Site should have enough space for both a girls softball field and a boys baseball field, and the site should have good street access and room for parking. This is just a general map showing the location of all the different sites that they looked at in 2016. I'm not going to go through all of those. They're in the document. People can look them up. I am going to talk about alternative 6 and alternative 10 because those get carried through a little further in the document. Alternative 6 is where you are proposing to build the Canyon Road Park. They looked at that a little further, did some landscape architect drawings. The baseball field really doesn't fit there without acquiring more property. And in addition, I think you have plans to build a road kind of along the edge of that property. Here's the reasons why that alternative was eliminated. You're planning to build a park there already, and really didn't want to sell that. It would result in a loss of public park space. It would require travel by the athletes. There would be noise in the neighborhood, lack of locker rooms. It's just not as convenient as having something adjacent to the school. And the baseball fields just don't really fit. They kind of fit, but they don't fit without buying more property and that kind of stuff. Now, alternative 10 is another one that got looked at further. This is down on Locust Lane. On this map, it looks like it's nice and flat, but it is not nice and flat. If you go out and look at it, it's very steep, very sloped. They did some more renderings of this area to see if things would work out, but ultimately this was eliminated too because of these reasons. It consists of steep slopes. It requires significant grading to make that work and make it cost prohibitive. There's a ditch runs through there. There's been no discussion with BYU on the purchase of the site, and it doesn't meet the intent of the Land and Water Conservation Funds, and the SCORP is the state master plan for parks, as well as the site we're proposing. So here's some of the other alternatives that were looked at. We looked at sharing the boys' baseball field with the girls' softball field. That doesn't really work because the fields are different. Pitcher's mounds are in a different place. Outfield fences are in a different place. You have scheduling issues with that. You can go in the document and look at how they lay out. It just logistically doesn't work. The potential to share the baseball field with the public is challenging. For 3 months of the year, Timpview's playing baseball up there. Through the summer, it's being programmed for other things that the school is using, other athletics things. So in my opinion, 3 months is the fourth of the year. I don't think that's really, even if you did schedule it, I don't think that meets the intent of land and water conservation. And then the potential for sharing the Edgemont Elementary field, that really isn't going to work because as the school was remodeled, there's just not a place for the ball fields. So at this point is where Provo City and I got involved to help look for some areas to replace Tim Kiwanis Park. We looked over in Grandview. There's an area just west of Grandview Elementary School, but that's kind of already acting as a park. It's not designated as a park, but it's being used kind of as a park. And that's owned by the school district, that land. But about a half mile to the west of that is a park called Rotary Park that's heavily used. It's meeting the needs of the area. So there really isn't any need for a park in this area. It's being serviced. We looked at over on the east side of Provo, that's that alternative 10 we looked at. And then we started looking down in southwest Provo. Part of the issue we come up with is you have to find a piece of land that's equivalent in value to the park, which is about $2 million. So to replace the Tim Kiwanis Park, we have to find a piece of property somewhere that equates to $2 million and then provides the amenities that are needed to get through this process. I know there's a lot of words, I'm going to read this. I know there's been some concern about you're addressing needs up in northeast Provo by putting a park down in, or a sports complex down in southwest Provo. So I want to read this. This is from the manual that guides what we're doing. It says, replacement property need not necessarily be directly adjacent to or close by the converted site. This policy provides the administrative flexibility to determine location, recognizing that the property should meet existing public outdoor recreation needs. While generally this will involve the selection of a site serving the same communities or area as a converted site, there may be exceptions. For example, if property being converted is in an area undergoing major demographic change and the area has no existing or anticipated future need for outdoor recreation, then the project sponsor should seek to locate the substitute area at another location within the jurisdiction. So the jurisdiction is Provo City. So I think we've followed this. We've had the state involved in this process from day one. They know where we're looking for the replacement site. They're well aware of that. They've ran it up their chain of command. We haven't received any feedback that that's not appropriate because it's in a different part of town. So I hope that kind of addresses this issue of why is it down in southwest Provo. In addition, from a practical standpoint, if you were to replace Tim Kiwanis Park up there with another park, you would have 3 parks within a very short distance. You've got the existing park, which you're going to try and keep a park as much as you can, from what I understand. You're going to build a new park a half a mile up the street, and then you would have this park. It just doesn't make sense, from my perspective, that you would want to put all that right up in that neighborhood. They're already going to get 2 parks out of this, plus, this park down in southwest Provo, which I think fits the community well. These are the locations of the site. The site's, well, I'll show you a little better here. The site's down by the airport, just off of Lakeview Parkway. This is a concept plan of the regional sports complex. This piece on the left is the part that will be the new land and water conservation area. The piece on the right will be owned by the city without the encumbrance of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But this, and I'll go through and show you what's there. So if you have any questions, let me know. The site is currently owned by the LDS Church. Part of the reason this process has taken so long is the city had to find a piece of property that would work. It's not easy to find a piece of property and then at that value, and somebody who's willing to sell it and tie it up until you get through this process to buy it. It's complicated. Luckily, you found one. So that's you've been negotiating with the LDS Church. You're planning on using 54 acres of a 100-acre site for this project. Access, it will be from a new road on the east side of the sports complex that will tie to Lakeview Parkway. There's some ditches out there that will need to be piped, and it's currently being farmed. These are the amenities that are going to be at this complex. About 12 of the 20-plus multi-purpose fields will be in the part that we are proposing with the environmental assessment. There'll be restroom facilities, a parking lot, landscaping, concessions, multi-use paths, and playgrounds. I think it's really, this is, as far as I know, a 100-acre site. That's about the only one in the state that I'm aware of. The environmental issues, I'm not aware of any environmental issues up at Tim Kiwanis Park site. I know there were some drainage concerns. We've addressed those in the environmental document. We contacted Provo City Public Works and tried to address those issues the best we can. Cultural resources, there are some down at the proposed mitigation site. There's some Native American sites there that we are working with the State Historic Preservation Office to maintain those or minimize impacts to those. We can't disclose where they are, but they're there. There are some wetlands that we're working through with the Corps of Engineers to get a 404 permit so you can build on that site if we get through this process. There's some potential Ute ladies tresses habitat, which is the threatened and endangered plant, but we've been out there twice and haven't found any signs of that. So I think when you go out one more year, it blooms in August, one more year, and then we should be good with that, or we'll plan around it to avoid it. And then the floodplain, the plan is to move the existing dike to the east property boundary where the road goes. I'm not going to read through all this, but there's been a lot of consultation and coordination that's gone on over the past 2 years. It's kind of all listed here. We've met with several of the federal and state agencies, met with the public, met with you, met with Provo City School District. Here are the next steps. The comment period ends at the end of this month for the environmental assessment. We'll review those comments and address them in the document. My guess is we'll have to change a few things, reword them, or explain why we did what we did. We'll prepare a final environmental assessment. We'll present that to you on September 11th. Ask you to sign a resolution that would go with the document and submit that to Susan Zara-Carisi up at the state, along with some other documents that need to go in. She will submit it to the National Park Service and to the Native American tribes to review for tribal coordination. And then at some point in the future, the National Park Service will decide whether they accept it or don't. My guess is they'll have some comments on the document that we'll have to address. I think if they were adamantly opposed, they would have said something by now, but you never know. It's hard to say. So as a consultant to you, my recommendation is you move ahead with the with the conversion process. You approve the document, you keep moving ahead, and at the same time, try and minimize the impacts to the residents up by Timpview the best you can. I think you're doing that by moving up the park to the north a little bit in your scheduling of when you're going to construct that, and also, you know, what the school district's trying to do with keeping the existing park the same. So that's basically it. Questions?
I've got a couple of questions. Will we get to see the public's comments as it's submitted to the government, or how do we go over, or will you incorporate those things and then just send them on?
We can do it however you want. We've already seen some of them. I mean, the Parks and Recs, Thomas is the one who's getting the comments, so we've seen some of them already. We can forward those on, or typically what we'll do is summarize those and address them in the document. There'll be a section in there for comments and coordination. We'll make sure that we're not trying to do anything in secret, so we'll make sure they're disclosed. We can present them to you if you want, or we can show you what came in and how we addressed them, or whatever you prefer.
Just as a council member, I'd be interested in hearing the concerns of the public, and so I'm aware of how they are
Sure.
addressed.
Yep. Anything else?
George?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Do you have could you back up and just talk a little bit about the environmental assessment of the Timpview Kiwanis Park in regards to flooding, drainage, the well? What exactly can you say to reassure the public about the impact there?
So in some of our meetings, the people who live up there mentioned there was some flooding in 83 and 84, I think, which we all remember. There was a lot of places in Provo that were flooded. But I think there was some flooding that went on there. I think there was some sandbagging, some other stuff. They can probably answer some of that better. We tried to meet with some people up there, but they didn't want to go out there, which is fine. So we talked with Provo City's Public Works one of the people in there, and he did some research, drafted up a letter, which is included in the document of his take on what's happened up there. I don't remember all the details, but we can send that to you if you want. But it's in the document of, I think they've addressed many of those issues from that time period, as you've addressed places all over the city from 83 and 84. And so, anyway, that's how we handled that, is by working with Provo City Public Works on that issue. We've also sent it on to the school district so they know, what the issues are there. So if they buy it, they're aware of that. So.
Okay, another question I had was about the Ute ladies' tresses. I was a little confused in the report because it said that they had gone in the fall when there weren't going to be any in bloom anyway, so they couldn't identify. And then they said you'd need to do this for 3 more years.
Okay, I can explain that.
And so, well, part of my question is, I guess you partly answered it. Did you just assess it this month? Because you said August. Okay. So if that's the requirement for 3 more years of assessing, how does that?
So it's in the northeast edge of the mitigation site, replacement site. There's a little strip along there that when we did the initial survey, it wasn't in the growing period. So the person doing that said there's some potential habitat for Ute ladies' tresses, which, so everybody knows, it's a white orchid about this tall. It blooms in late July and through August. So as soon as we could get out there during the growing season, we went out and looked, and haven't identified anything. He just went out, our consultant went out just a few weeks ago and didn't find anything. He doesn't think there is going to be anything, but we've coordinated with the Fish and Wildlife Service, who has responsibility for that. They would like us to do an inventory every year for 3 years to make sure there aren't any. So I've been working with Thomas, and the Parks Department will do that. But in addition, so everybody can move ahead, we can just avoid that area altogether, probably with what we're doing. It's not a big area.
So if in the worst case scenario, and I wouldn't describe finding an orchid a bad scenario, I just mean if you do find that they're there,
then we'll have to avoid it.
You would just avoid it? You wouldn't be in any risk of being out of compliance if you have a park there already?
We would work with the Fish and Wildlife Service, but they would probably just tell us to avoid that area, which is just planned to be grass in that area anyway.
And finally, I don't know how to pronounce Susan Sarah Carisi, is that her name? So I've talked with people in the neighborhood who've talked with her, and they've indicated that she didn't seem to indicate what the violation of the LWCF contingencies might have been per se. So I guess but you've been in conversation with her. So can you clarify what her opinion is about whether or not the city was out of compliance?
I don't think she specifically identified this as being out of compliance. She goes out and audits the parks or the land and water conservation properties every 5 years. But I think she's raised the issue that you're using this as, Timpview's using this as their ball field. We need to address this issue. I know that some of the residents have talked to her about, well, the public's using it this much, is that enough? Based on my conversations with her, the way you're using it currently is no. Because at least a fourth of the year it's not available for the public.
Is it because it's been out of compliance for so long that it's almost kind of like they've looked the other way and they're just tolerating it, or what? I mean,
I don't know.
Okay. And maybe this is a question that'll come up with, I don't know, people from the school district want to respond, but in the interlocal agreement proposed terms, it says district and city will define other needed easements on the property and define maintenance responsibilities of these easements. You've indicated this is really crucial. I think I heard a couple of people from the public saying this is really crucial. I know when we talked about this previously on the city council, this was something. Am I doing something to the mic or no?
Me?
I know this was something that I felt pretty strongly was key to the whole thing, was that if there's a way to preserve the same, if there's a way to preserve the same space, so that the use is as close to what it currently is, then that seems to be the best way. So I don't know if you can comment, or if others are better people to answer that question, but I'm just curious to know, and we talked about this briefly 2 weeks ago, but it doesn't specify if those easements, if they've been agreed upon. I know there was discussion about it, but I think I heard someone else from the public saying, I mean, there's anxiety. I think Ms. Morrow said, I mean, if we're going to end up with a sign that says no public access because it's school property, then we failed. If we're going to have very clearly delineated rules about use and maintenance and protection that's in perpetuity, then we're close to the spirit of protecting it as a park, even if technically it isn't, even though technically it hasn't even been technically a public park in the same way that other parks have been because of the school overlay. But it seems to me that language is the linchpin here for reassuring the public, reassuring at least me on the city council and others. So I don't know if you want to comment on that or if there's others.
Can I make a comment on that? I think that those are the things. What we are addressing now is the environmental impact areas. And I think after that assessment has been completed and accepted, then those negotiations come into play, from what I understand. Then we can talk about, this is what, we have a document that says these are the terms that we've kind of agreed upon. And are we still on the same page with those agreements? This is just basically addressing the environmental assessment.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I'm not prepared to talk about that, so that's not.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Scott, that you would like to bring forward? Okay, thank you very much. This item is open for public comment, and we will take the time now to do that.
Good evening. My name is Brian Smith, and it's on. Your button's on.
I don't know, the light's not working, so you just keep talking and I'll play with the button.
Brian Smith, Provo resident for a lot of years. I've had the good fortune of working and actually coaching some of your grandkids and actual kids in soccer. I'm the soccer guy. I'm here in the capacity as president of Utah Youth Soccer. I wanted to talk, just give some stats, but specifically to say that Utah Youth Soccer is in great support of the whole transition of this property, turning it over to the school district, hearing from Dr. Montero say that this would be open use, and that he has and would facilitate.
Brian, I appreciate this. We're not debating right now whether this is right for the school district. We're debating the environmental assessment statement. Okay.
I'm gonna ask for a little leeway because I didn't stand up when everybody else stood up.
And I wish you would have, because I'm going to have to stop and really insist that you address the environmental assessment, not whether we should sell it to the school or not at this point.
Understood. The environmental assessment is a good thing. I hope the council looks at it favorably when it comes about and is finished and is completed. Utah County has grown over 100% every year for the last 20 years. Soccer kids have grown from 30,000 kids to 60,000 kids in the last 20 or 30 years. It's only going to get worse as our population grows. We have the youngest demographic in the state, almost in the nation, and it's going to get worse. This transition is a great thing. Look at the environmental impact study favorably. Please do the right thing, make the right decision. And if you have any questions or input that you seek on the youth and who's going to be using, we make we're the ones that make the votes on where we play soccer.
Thank you.
In
That,
Provo,
okay,
not Arizona, not Boise.
thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Justine Jordan, and I live in Bonnie Morrow's neighborhood district. And I really mostly had a question about the facility, the place for the replacement property. As he was speaking about the place and where it was going to go, as my feelings about the area are there are some seasons that it's quite buggy out there. And I would hope that that would be addressed with some abatement or some sort of something that it would be addressed in some way, because I know that there are some times of the year that there's a lot of bugs out there. And so that would, in my mind, impact that area quite a bit, I would think. So I don't know if that's been addressed or looked at, but that was my only concern about it being way out there.
Thank you. That's good comment. Well, it's just not, sorry, Marion. Will you state your name for the record for us? Thanks.
And I'm the Edgemont neighborhood chair. You probably all know that by now. My concern is for the people in my neighborhood. I've read all 218 pages of this. And while I have some concerns, I'm going to turn that time over to Jay Goodluck, because he's, done a lot of work on this, and I feel he's much more prepared there. I looked up the definition of environmental just for the fun of it, and it says it is the surroundings in which a person, animal, or a plant operates. I don't think this report addresses the people portion of what the environment really is. Taking away this park is going to put an undue burden on the people in our area for the benefit of somebody else in the city. Also, it's pitting one neighborhood against another, and I hate to see that happening. But we already see it. We can use all kinds of open space. We need open space. So we're concerned about the fact that we don't have access, amenities, and open space. So we've seen nothing in writing from the school district to maintain this as an open space like they said. Would it be too much to ask the city council to request a memorandum of understanding or a letter of intent from the school board before the next council meeting? Thank
you. My name is Sharon Bennett, and I'm Marion's vice chair. I'm hoping you'll give me an extra minute since the chair's pretty hard on this. Anyway, so from the Land Water Conservation Fund manual, for which these funds were given, it says that the purpose is to increase the number of protected state and local outdoor recreation resources. And I didn't have access to the proposal description and environmental screening form that Ron was given, I guess, to do his environmental assessment. So I have a couple of concerns about the environmental assessment. As was mentioned, we've read the whole thing. Jay's just better at presenting than the rest of us. Sorry, we get a little nervous since we don't do this for a living. A couple of things that were brought up. One was that this is being done for Title IX. If that's the case, again, in the LWCF, it states that reasonable use limitations can be placed. It says the project sponsors, which is the city, may impose reasonable limitations on the type and extended use of the areas and facilities acquired. Those limitations may be imposed on the number of persons using an area or facility or the type of users, such as hunters only or hikers only, not not unreasonable to stretch that to baseball players only on a baseball field. The other thing that was brought up was the city being out of compliance. Also, again, in the LWCF, it states, so in his environmental assessment, it says that one of the reasons you're doing this is because the city's out of compliance. Again, just in the next paragraph, it says that the city, the sponsor, has the option of leasing the area facility to a private organization or individual by entering into a concession agreement with an operator to provide a public outdoor recreation opportunity at the fund-assisted site. So we don't have to sell this. We can let the school use it, and then you would still have the resource to go back and say, well, you're not doing what we expected you to do, and pull back that use if that needed to happen, because they weren't. But according to this, as I read it, and maybe Brian reads it differently, but I don't feel like we need to sell it. Also, 2 more points. In the environmental assessment, as I read it and tried to get into the riveting material, there's no mention that we saw of the impact of building too close to that well house. The well house is mentioned in passing, but that's about as far as that goes. So there's no mention of any possible contamination from using it as a staging area. He mentions that he's spoken to the people about the well house, but I'm curious what they actually said isn't actually contained that we can find in the environmental assessment. If the school district, as has been stated, but not that we've seen in writing anywhere, feels that the highest and best use is leaving this open space, then it seems like that the LWCF or the National Park Service shouldn't have a problem with us putting in a deed restriction or other form of writing that this remain open space. Also, that I haven't heard from the council is...
Sharon, I'm going to just give you 1 more minute.
Also, I haven't heard from the council another way to protect it is for you protecting it through some kind of a zoning thing as you sell it.
My name is Lynn Garner. We've lived next to Benoist Park for the last 50 years. When I read the environmental impact statement, I get the feeling that it's a rationalization for the sale of the park. The alternatives considered are dismissed in such offhand and insufficient arguments that it's appalling to me. For example, the alternative site 6 was considered by the school district before they ever considered buying the park. Therefore, to use LCWF criteria to eliminate 6 is entirely spurious. It doesn't fit. And the same kind of feeling runs all the way through the environmental assessment. I think it's an argument for the sale, not a mitigation document.
Good evening. My name is Jay Goodliff. Can you hear me? I live in the Edgemont neighborhood. Thank you for taking this opportunity to hear us. I want to first talk about the equivalent location. I appreciate Mr. Clegg putting up on the part up there that it's supposed, what the exceptions are. The guideline, which is supposed to be addressed in Chapter 3 of the Environmental Assessment, is that the property proposed for replacement must be of reasonably equivalent usefulness and location as that being converted. Then, as it says, there may be exceptions. The exception that he put up there, which is that the place that you're leaving from, that is Benoist Park, no longer has any use, or people don't want to use it anymore, or demographics have shifted, that there's nobody living there anymore. That's what the exception was put up there. The does not follow into that exception. The park is used. People haven't moved away from northeast Provo. They still live there. So that's not a reason, that's not the exception you can use to move it. Throughout, in fact, when you look at the actual report, it makes it very clear that the sport complex that is being proposed is a very different use than the community park. So that means it cannot be of reasonably equivalent usefulness, and it's certainly not in reasonably equivalent location if you're moving it from northeast Provo to southwest Provo. Now, the other thing that I have a moment to discuss, because I think that the flooding is inadequately addressed, the well is certainly not addressed at all, so those should both be there. The other part is, because it's actually addressed in the document, is that it's not used by the public, and you could hear Mr. Clegg talk about that. As I understand it, the Timpview High School boys baseball team cannot be practicing off-season during the summer. They can't hold official practices during the summer. Otherwise, they'd be out of compliance with the Utah High School Activities Association. So that means anything that's going on there is not a Timpview High School activity. It must be some other form of activity which may have restrictions because the Parks and Recreation has decided not to schedule it by their own choice, but that means it's open to other parts of the public in some way or another. All those things that are going on in the summer and the fall must be public uses. They might be restricted public uses, but they are not school uses because you wouldn't be allowed to practice. You're not allowed to hold official practice out of season. So that means to me that the public is using it. It's a prima facie case that the public is using it. So I think it's incorrect to say that you're out of compliance. That's why we talked to Susan Zeracarizi, and she says, well, so far I haven't seen anything that, you haven't lost any money, you're not out of, we haven't stated that you're out of compliance. So that's puzzling to me. The other thing that's mentioned here, because it was brought up several times, is that the school district...
Jay, I'm going to give you one more minute.
Thank you for yielding. That the school district is committed to keeping it open, and I really appreciate that. But the truth is, I'm not worried about Dr. Montero, who's left, or Micaiah Jensen. I'm not worried that they're going to keep it open. I'm worried about the next administration. So do you know why that playground is there? That the playground is on Timpview Benoist Park that was built most recently? It's because Edgemont Elementary closed down the playground and refused to let any children play there. Because they would not allow children to play on that elementary school playground, the neighborhood created that playground. They created their own playground on Timpview Benoist Park. So while they might say now, we're going to keep it open, there is plenty of history showing that the Provo School District has not kept it open. So the stronger, this is what Councilmember Hanley said, the stronger the agreement that you can make to show that it will be open, more than, say, an interlocal agreement, but some sort of easement, the stronger you can make that, the more credible those commitments will be, and the more the neighborhood would favor such an agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Abby Wilson. I am one of the softball coaches at Timpview High School. I came late to the meeting because we actually have a game this evening. I rushed over here during a lunch
Abby,
break.
I'm going to tell you what we told her. Are you addressing the...
Environmental
Okay,
assessment,
very
yes.
good.
I hear from the neighborhood that they are worried about the issues that have been brought up in the environmental assessment. It was easy, though, to skip over the slide that projected the growth of Timpview High School. The high school is projected to grow by 10,000 students over the next 10 years. It is not possible to remain in the facility that they are in the land that they are in, and not grow with their student population. Something will have to change. Whether it's on this land, whether a brand new school is built in a whole new location, something will have to change. And keeping the land as it is forever by the chair, by the neighborhood, as they are, from what I'm hearing, maybe they have an alternate idea, but something will have to change. And it cannot remain exactly as it is, simply for the sake of that, as it has been. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Hunter. I'm the athletic director at Timpview High School, and just needed to comment on in compliance with the activities that go on in the summertime with the sports programs. Although the season may be concluded, we have many programs, as do other high schools in the state, that are allowed to have their camps and clinics open to the public where the young children come in and pay a fee, they develop their skills. Obviously, they're very prideful and want to grow up in the community and go to the high schools that they attend. But I just wanted to make you aware that we are not breaking any rules or compliance issues by holding things in the summer times with the sports programs. They are building their programs, or allowing opportunities for kids to participate in those, and that is not against the Utah High School activities protocols and guidelines. Just wanted to make that note.
Brenda Tata. I'm a 44-year resident of the Edgemont neighborhood. Seen a lot of growth there. My concerns and opinions are two. I would wish that they would look at option 6 a little bit more closely as an alternative to using our, selling the Bunus Park as a potential for Timpview to use as ball fields. My other concern, and I don't know if this was addressed in the environmental impact statement, is with having a sports complex so close to the lake and the integrity of the lake. I know that with a lot of green area, they use fertilizer, and I'm wondering about the algae blooms and what impact having that so close to the lake would have on future algae blooms in the lake. I don't know if that was addressed at all, and I feel it should be, because that's something that affects the health of the whole valley, not just Provo. Thank you.
I hope you'll allow me the opportunity to speak again. Is that okay?
As long as you stick to the environmental assessment.
Certainly. So again, Craig Bostock, Provo City resident. I am a licensed environmental health scientist in the state as well. I won't state who I work for because that'd be inappropriate for me to do so. I would like to commend Mr. Clegg for the study that he did. He did a very appropriate job for what he was asked to do. As far as the drinking water goes and the concerns that were brought up at public comment, I will make the statement that Utah Administrative Code R309600 would come into play with the well that's in place, and staging for future development would not have any impact on compliance with the city with state administrative code, as aforementioned. So there is no concerns there. I would suggest, however, to the council to speak with water operators and public work officials in the city to know if that well is even in use anymore. There has been some issues with that well in the past, and I would suggest city council to understand if there is anything there that might be valid of protecting, or even knowing if there's any water left in that aquifer. As far as the flooding goes in that area, I wasn't around in this county in 1983, nor was I old enough to have recollection of the flooding. But of all accounts I've read, some anecdotal and some scientific, all of the drainages in Utah County were flooding, including Little Rock Canyon. And there has been many drainages that have been put in place out on the west side of our county that would allow for such flooding or such precipitation to reduce the amount of flooding that would happen within Utah County. I also sit on a committee that works with algae at Utah Lake, and the park that's being produced does not show signs to myself that would produce an amount of contamination that would adversely affect Utah Lake. Utah Lake is going through a project right now many of the city council members may be aware of that would require many restrictions to the public services that would be used to buffer and clean the wastewater. So that's where the work is being done at Utah County, in the county side of it for wastewater itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate Jensen, I'm a resident of Provo. I'm also the president of the school board. I appreciate you engaging in this process. Towards the environmental, I think perhaps there was some concern that the well wasn't mentioned very far. I think it's because that I don't know of anyone who wants to change the nature of the well or move the well or anything along those lines. Indeed, just to restate the position of the school board, we seek not to substantially change the character or nature. We are residents of Provo. We pay the enormous sum of $400 a month to be a school board member. We're not making a profit out of that. We live here with our neighbors. Frank Christensen, many of you know that I used to come up here with crutches and stuff. When I did that injury, Frank Christensen, who lives adjacent to that park, was there to pick me up. I did not do anything to hurt that man in any way. We all want to try and do our best for the community. And I appreciate you engaging in that. I appreciate many of those that have spoken to that. I appreciate all those that have taken interest and passion, because that is what makes the community great. And with the environmental protections, certainly with not changing the nature of the park, not putting a building next to the well. I was the one who probably brought up the staging, because there's a piece of parking lot in front of that park. I'm trying to tell the truth. I think he's going to lose parking in a construction project. That's going to be a challenge for our neighborhood. So I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Bonnie Morrow, North 10th View. In the environmental study itself, it does not mention where and how the land can be used once it is turned over to the school district. We'd mentioned in the reports that 10th View High is crumbling and unstable, and it would be interesting for us to know exactly what can and can't be used on that land and where those locations will be limited to. Thank you.
Danny Engelman, Northeast Provo resident. I want to mention about the study that's a draft. And these recommendations that we made just compliment even more. I want to compliment Mr. Clegg on his transparency and the work he's done in good faith. I feel like this is a great process that's going on. We're seeing government in action tonight. We're getting all the options available to us with this difficult situation. Presenting with some great alternatives to move forward in good faith, and I appreciate the emphasis there on the study, how it pointed out the options of alternative sites and where this project could go and where it couldn't go. And again, it's a draft and it's a work in progress. I appreciate the work of the council and with the consultants on this. Thank you.
Okay, we will close this portion of the public comment. Bring it back to the council for any discussion. Again, remind the council that this is hearing number 1 of 2. Our next public hearing will be November 11th, where that will September. Thank you, September 11th, which will be the first opportunity we will have to vote on this item. Any comments at this point?
I'm just wondering, McKay or anyone else from the school district, if there's, by September 11th, if we'd have any more details on the conversations about the interlocal agreement. I mean, we got the draft today, so I'm wondering if that would be helpful to the council to have more.
So So this draft is you're the author, right? Yeah. So it's a back and forth.
Mhm.
It's a back and forth. This is a draft. We started with a memo of understanding that was put together by the superintendent and talked to a number of the neighbors that was deemed insufficient. And so we were looking at the city. Tonight was the first I saw that. We'll have to take this back to the
Okay.
board. I think that because of the memorandum of understanding was not sufficient, we were looking to the council to propose something to the school board that they could discuss and propose something back. But we're willing to engage in that process. But you're the sellers. We're the ones that decide do we make that leap? Do we use that those government funds?
So it's as much on us as it is on you, is what you're saying. Okay.
And that's good to know. And again, September 11th, we will be discussing the process. It's the environmental assessment that we will be voting on to. This will be the document that we will send back to Washington then at this point. And we are still in the process of negotiating.
Yeah, I guess I understand that, and I wasn't trying. I just thought that the closer we get to
Absolutely, the quicker we can come
an
up with that
agreement,
understanding.
the easier the process gets. And I think that if there's a way, if we get to a point before September 11th where that can be closer and people can look at it, then it might be more reassuring to people. So.
And that's a great thing. And Mr. Parker, can we talk a little bit more about that, or do you want to? Where can we go with this?
Sure, thank you. So just to give a little background on this particular document, this was an attempt to summarize the feedback that was provided by the neighborhood and the results of some informal discussions with school district staff and others. This was actually sent out to the neighborhood in response to a request from the council prior to the surplusing hearing, which was held in February, which the council determined to place the item on the surplus property list. Hasn't changed since then. It represents kind of the state of the discussion at that point. So again, I appreciate Board Member Jensen kind of accepting it as a point in time discussion, and we'll continue to move forward with those discussions with the superintendent and Stephanie and others who would like to be involved in that process from the district.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, we will, if there's no objection, we will adjourn by unanimous consent.